Time to turn it up Tuesday.
Oh,
with some carbs. Right. That is the subject for today. And we are answering the question, are carbs the enemy? They're so demonized all of the darn time.
it's like it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
Carbs, fats, like whatever, over the years, generations. Like, oh, this is the culprit for why everyone's obese. So this is what everyone struggles with. It's not whatever, right? And you walk through the grocery store and you see it all over. It's like low fat, low carbs, this, that, whatever. It's like, oh, sometimes it can be overwhelming.
I know. Right? What's up, Miss Becca? So just like last week, I created a little presentation for y'all. So we're going to share our screen and kind of just cover the basics and answer the question, are carbs the enemy? Bear with us.
Oh.
All right. So the importance of carbs. What exactly is the purpose of carbs or carbohydrates as they're known?
Joy.
They do. They provide a lot of joy. This is true. But they provide the body with a quick source of energy. They also provide stored energy in the liver and muscles. And this is obviously going to vary depending on how much muscle you have. They hold 4 calories per gram, which is the same amount of calories that protein also holds. Helps in muscle preservation. So hence it is protein sparing, meaning that your body is going to use that carbs as a source of energy instead of breaking down muscle, which is its second choice to do if you don't have enough carbs in your system or energy. They also promote digestive health, which is carbs are a source of soluble and insoluble fiber, which then also influences heart health and diabetes with regards to helping lower cholesterol levels and helping with insulin stability. Also a great source of vitamins and minerals that we need. So are they the enemy?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. This is correct. But usually the majority of the population, because they are so delicious, depending on what we're eating, obviously, and how they're prepared, the majority of the population typically overconsumes them in comparison to what their body actually requires, how much they're moving in their daily life. So that's where carbs become the enemy.
That's where it gets a bad rap, because it's way easier to point a finger at that thing than to take personal ownership or responsibility and say, hey, I'm way overdoing this versus like, hey, whatever. And so that's where they get a bad rap, is because people like them, so they overconsume them, and then it's like, oh, it's their fault. It's like, well, no one made you do it.
This is true, but just like with anything, like if you overconsume anything, you will gain weight. So regardless of fat, carbs, or protein, but typically most people gravitate towards carbs and fat. So how much should you actually be consuming?
All of them. It depends, right? Like everything in life, it depends on your circumstance.
And so things that influence, how much carbs and how many carbs you should be consuming, it's going to be unique to each person depending on your tolerance. Diabetics typically consume less, we'll say, simple carbs than somebody who has a working pancreas. Also, it's going to depend on what your current goals are, whether you are training for a marathon, whether you're building muscle, whether you're trying to lose weight.
Do you want to be a sumo wrestler?
Do you want to be a sumo wrestler?
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that. It's so true, right? Also going to be dependent on your daily activity levels, how much you're moving around, what your NEAT is, or your non-exercise thermogenesis or activity thermogenesis, which is basically like, I like to tap my feet. That is me burning calories. Did you know? And then your training regime also kind of goes back to current goals, but like how often are you weightlifting? What kind of workouts are you doing? But in general, when it comes to how much or how many carbs you should be consuming, first, biggest thing, which we touched on last week, is you really want to ensure that you're meeting your required protein intake. And so when it comes to, you have a daily caloric requirement that your body has that you should know because you've either been tracking it or you have a general range or idea of where you're ranging from. First, you want to make sure you're hitting that protein. So intake of 0.8 to 1.2 gram per pound. Once you hit that protein requirement, Then you want to make sure that you're hitting your adequate fat amount. So typically around 30% of your intake should make up fat. Depending on the sources of protein that you're consuming, this may or may be very simple for people. But you want to make sure that you're hitting a minimum of 30 to 35 grams a day. And then that leaves carbs. So the rest of your intake is made up of carbs.
Have a party there.
Have a party. So once again, it varies depending on how many calories you're eating per day, how much protein you're required to maintain and or build muscle mass, and then obviously your current goals and all of that.
I'm thinking about it, and thinking about it like this allows you to be able to stay in track with a little bit more ease versus like a lot of times the struggle is that people gravitate towards high fat, hard carb things, and then they have a struggle to like, oh, well, like, how do I get in enough protein, or what's going on without blowing my numbers? Where it's like, if you prioritize protein first and then kind of backfill, it makes it easier to be able to enjoy the carbs that you like within your plan and not have to stress about some of the other things.
And so what types of carbs we're talking about should you be focusing on? Well, there's 3 main types. They differ with regards to, we'll say, qualities and purposes that they do. Some are higher quality, just like your fuel that you put in your car. You have lower grade fuel, you have higher grade fuel. The same kind of comes with carbs or any type of things you put in your body, right? So when it comes to carbs, we have our sugars, which are our simple carbs, starches, which are our complex carbs, and then we have fiber, which is also a complex carb. So when it comes to sugars and simple carbs, they're usually made up of 1 to 2 sugars. We got like glucose, lactose, fructose, sucrose, the list goes on. They're usually naturally occurring in like fruits and milks. We have added sugars, which we all love, in our sweets and treats, honey, sugar, maple syrup.
Which nowadays is also in your fruits and milks.
Exactly. Juices, fruit concentrates, refined grains, such as like the white breads, pastas, flours. As I mentioned, they're usually our decadent sweets and our salty, fatty snacks that we love or crave, like potato chips, pastries, croissants, anything else. They are typically less nutrient dense and they are quicker to digest, which means that they typically spike your insulin levels, which can result in crashing blood sugars. And so sometimes when you have like that really high like energy and insulin spike, then all of a sudden you have that like from eating maybe like a brownie or whatever you want.
Well, it's also like, I think a lot of people experience this in their day where it's like, oh, like a couple hours after lunch, they kind of drag where it's like, oh, that, you know, depending on when you eat lunch 2 or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock drag, it's, oh, I need to pick me up. And it's because you probably went hard at lunch with something that is in this category and then brought you way up and then now you're coming down.
Exactly. And so that can result, there is obviously like acute insulin spikes and chronic insulin
like
spikes. No, but basically short-term, long-term. And so like your body in general on a daily basis, you're going to have spikes of insulin, but you don't want it chronically elevated all of the time. And that's where we have these diseases that come into play. But sugars and simple carbs in general are great for quick energy. And they're also really good for right after a workout to replenish anything that you had utilized during your workout. So to give you that more sustained energy. And come on, let's be honest.
We love them.
We do. We enjoy them. Most people.
Or at least we do.
I know.
You might.
But for the most part, most people in general want to limit your intake of these, or, you know, have a day where it's like, oh, I look forward to my simple treat.
Well, with anything like with protein, it's just a matter of intentionality, right? So it's not necessarily you have to eliminate something. You should be intentional with what you're eating, when you're eating it, how it fits into everything. It allows you to be able to, you know, be in control of the way that you look and feel, and not necessarily be stuck in a situation where you're wondering what's going on.
Yeah. So starches is another category. So we have our complex carbs, and that's 3 or more sugars. They're the chains of these simple sugars, which are your whole grains. You got oats, barley, brown rice, whole wheat, pastas, those types of things, whole wheat breads. Then you have starchy vegetables such as like peas, corn, lima beans, potatoes. Your starches or your complex carbs are usually higher in fiber and nutrients. They take longer to digest and they are slower to absorb, which allows you to stay fuller longer and also allows for a more steady insulin level without having that crash that you may get from the spike from the simple sugars. So typically you want to focus on more of these because we want to have, you know, more fiber in our diet and more nutrients to just fuel our body and feel better. And nobody likes crashing, right?
And sometimes it helps us save ourselves from ourselves, because if you eat this and you're not necessarily like getting hangry, then it allows you to be able to enjoy quality of life. Whereas if you're prioritizing simple carbs, then it allows you to feel like you're just ravenous and you want to eat all of the time, or you just can't get enough. So this kind of helps balance that out and will put you in a position to, like I said, save yourself from yourself.
Mm-hmm. So last one is the fiber, which is also a complex carb. It's the indigestible part of plant foods. We have our whole grains, fruits, veggies, legumes, also known as beans, nuts, and seeds. Typically, it's recommended to get about 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day, but this is going to vary based on your current fiber intake.
You don't want to shoot up
Yeah, so if your current fiber intake is 5 grams, I would not even get to that 25 gram mark because you want to allow your body to adjust, because if you increase too much, you will have constipation. And this is where water intake is crucial. Water intake and activity level to help get those bowels moving so you're not stopped up.
And sometimes people actually think it's oh, I'm backed up, so I need fiber. I'll increase my fiber or do this to kind of help move it through. Where it's most of the time, if you're stopped up, it's because you need more water to push things through. And so that would always be the first thing. If you do feel a little backed up the water, because that you need that liquid to be able to move things.
Exactly. Fiber also helps with satiety, which is a great thing. Like he was saying earlier, save yourself from yourself. And then it contributes to gut and digestive health, decreased cholesterol levels. It offsets cancer and diabetes. Fiber is a great nutrient. And typically you want to focus more on these as well, because we all want to feel satiated and we want poop moving and stool moving, right? Because nobody wants a bloated belly. So high quality and delicious carbohydrate sources that we enjoy. The starchier versions, they're usually higher in calories per volume, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just depends on where your calories lie, how many meals you eat per day, all of those things.
And same thing, you just have to be a little bit more intentional, because if they are higher in calories, then it's and lower in volume, and then you can't necessarily serve up the same size plate that you would other things. And that's where, you just
give and take.
Yes.
So the potatoes are a great source, red, golden, sweet potatoes. We actually prefer potatoes over rice because we can usually eat more potatoes per calorie than we can rice. And we usually like a little bit bigger volume. Legumes are also a great source. So black beans, string beans, peas, they also have a great amount of fiber in them as well. High fiber and nutrient dense sources. These are typically going to be lower in calories per volume and obviously have a lot more nutrients in them. Things that we're talking about are like leafy green vegetables, kale, spinach, romaine lettuce, bok choy, which I'm about to cook up, arugula, phenomenal, asparagus. And a lot of these, even like asparagus, has a good amount of protein, not in comparison to animal-based protein.
You're not going to replace that.
No, but you will get some protein in your asparagus, which is great. Cucumber, also really refreshing, delicious. It super low in calories. Same with celery, bell peppers, cabbage, broccoli, onions, mushrooms. Oh my goodness, we just had some portobello mushrooms the other day. Phenomenal. Zucchini, carrots, beets. The list goes on, but they're amazing.
What was the fatty mushroom the other day that it tastes like scallops?
Ooh, king trumpet mushrooms. Oh. We have some of those too, which we're excited, and they are delicious as well. But fruits, last one, fruits, they're not as necessary to include in your diet if you are going to include them. Great sources are berries. They're usually, you can eat quite a bit of them and not have a huge, we'll say, calorie hit on your total daily calories. Raspberries are actually really high in fiber for the amount that you're able to eat. Guava is a great one. Apples, cherries, grapefruit, pears, avocado. Yes, it is a fruit. Just FYI.
No, but I would be careful with avocado as a carb source.
Yes, because there is fat.
Yeah, so
it's an equal fat source.
It's not just like, oh, it's the same. So
no,
some of those are tricky.
I know.
In there.
I did. I snuck it. Avocado, it's a fat source,
yeah.
But it can also be as a fruit and carb source.
And, they have all those shirts and jokes and memes. I'm the good kind of fat. And even the good kind of fat done too much will make you the bad kind of fat. I'm just saying.
All right, alternatives to things that we love. So there are a couple things, like depending on if you want to include these alternatives into your intake, there's Mr. Tortilla wraps, which are a great alternative. They're delicious. You can order them online, and I think they have them at Walmart now. I don't know if it's only online, but they have like big burrito ones, and I think for the whole massive tortilla, it's like 220 calories, but a shit ton of fiber. And in comparison to that size and a regular tortilla, massive difference.
Well, the reason that you would want to potentially do alternatives is that way you can, like, at least for us, you can still have a decent volume and not feel like this is a joke, right? So it's like if you were to use the Mr. Tortilla as an example, if you're using their small ones, you could have, you have like 10 of them, and it's the same as having like 2 regular corn tortillas. And so that's where you give and take, where when it comes to, like, at least for us, satiation and volume, because like for me, if I eat one taco, I'm going to be pissed, but if I can have a lineup of them, I'm going to be great, right? And then it also allows me to put more protein in it, shuffle them into my mouth.
Exactly.
There you go. Everybody wins.
Olay wraps are another great one. Just be careful. Stuff that has flax seeds and psyllium husk and stuff. You may get gassy. I'm just throwing that out there, but it also is going to be dependent on where your current fiber intake is. So I give you that forewarning for some of these things. The Sara Lee, or there's another like Health Harvest or some other low calorie bread, but they're actually pretty decent. Shirataki, palm noodles, kelp noodles, bonza pasta are also great. The bonza pasta is almost equal, I would say, in calories to traditional pasta. However, there is more protein in it than other pasta. So it's just a different way to get a little bit more protein in your intake and still eat some pasta. Egg white crepes, you can either make them yourself by mixing egg whites and protein powder together. Even I was going to experiment with and some coconut flour, doing egg whites and some psyllium husk, which is another thing of fiber as well. So it'll give it the binding effect of it. Portobello mushrooms, great alternative to hamburger buns, which we had yesterday, and it was phenomenal, super meaty. Wadham Farms maple syrup, oh my goodness, it's like crack. And then stevia and monk fruit sweeteners are also great as well. So how to eat more food in a calorie deficit. There's a couple ways that you can do this when it comes to eating carbs. So more veggies, focus on more veggies, which means you're going to have more fiber in your intake. So higher fiber means that you're going to be more satiated and not be craving or hangry all the time.
And like more veggies doesn't necessarily mean you have to sit down and eat a bunch of salads.
No.
Sometimes when people are making, changes in their intake, they just like, I don't want to eat salads all the time, right? And so like I don't know if there's anything wrong with eating salads all the time. We eat them regularly, but that doesn't mean that you have to have a big bowl of veggies that you feel like it's a salad.
Yeah. Also, veggies are low in calories, so you can eat a shit ton of them, right? Without having a big dent on your daily total calories. Doing swaps. So kind of what we had mentioned earlier, having those alternatives. So maybe changing noodles to zoodles, or perhaps even doing like a half and half. So you do maybe half a serving of pasta, half a serving of like the zoodle or whatever other thing you want to do. Doing the hamburger buns instead of the portobello mushrooms, or finding lower calorie hamburger buns, also great option. Potato buns tend to be typically lower in calories.
And same thing, you could potentially do a halfie with that. It's like, like the bottom of the bun and then the top is a mushroom, or vice versa. So like if you have 2 people like this, you can share one bun and then still have a fun meal that tastes good and keeps calories down.
Yep. Having less meals in a day. So fasting is we'll say controversial topic as well, but like in general, we all fast. We fast when we're sleeping, just so you know.
So first meal is you break fast.
And you break fast, exactly. Breakfast, break fast.
Yeah.
So. But fasting in general, like if you're to be a little bit, we'll say a little bit more structured with your intake, if even just a 10 to 12 hour fast, which is pretty simple for most people.
It's probably normal.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's pretty typical for most people, has a lot of health benefits in general. And it'll allow you can even push that breakfast meal back a little bit, which will allow you to consume more calories in less time and in a single sitting. So having 2 to, we'll say 2.5, because some people are like, I need a snack, 3 meals a day is a great option. But once again, this is going to be dependent on your preference, depending on you as a person and your health and body requirements. These are just different ways that you can do that.
And like the reality is, like, if you're eating less meals throughout the day, then you could probably have bigger meals without necessarily going, too far. Sometimes the downside of having 6, 7, 8 meals is like, they feel like they're so small, it's not really meals. It's like you're snacking.
Yeah, it's only like a couple hundred calories.
And so like condensing it down into eating less frequently allows you to enjoy what you're eating considerably more. Right. And I know that.
And then maybe you don't need an alternative if you want pasta.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people like, oh, like, there's like, oh, you shouldn't skip breakfast because it's a most important meal of the day, or like all these, like, whatever, but you're not skipping it. You're just having it later. And so having something later doesn't mean that you're eliminating it. Right. So like that principle applies, just like whenever you have your first meal, it doesn't have to be with your cup of coffee or before work.
Yeah. And like even fasting, hangry, it's not an emergency. So it really teaches you what an emergency is. Just going to tell you that right now. Last thing, carb cycling, or we'll call it calorie cycling, because typically when you do calorie cycling, you're usually cycling your carbs and the amounts of carbs that you eat in a particular day. So let's say if you aren't doing a lot during the week, and you're not typically super hungry during the week, you can have lower calories during the week, and then you can have higher calories on the weekend, or like 1 or 2 days at your choice, where it's like, I want to go out for a meal, or whatever, you want to look forward to something.
Yeah. And so you can obviously do that, like she said, over days of the week, or you could even do it within your single day, right? It's like, all right, when you're busy throughout the day, you just have prioritized protein, and then dinner's a bigger meal, right? So like it can work within a single day or spread throughout the week.
Exactly. All right. So in conclusion, carbs are not the enemy. Know what your body can tolerate and what sources you actually enjoy consuming regularly when it comes to carbs. And then be sure to focus on nutrient-dense carbs, those complex carbs and veggies, to make sure that you are fueling and getting the most nutrients that you can out of your food. Limit or time simple carbs in your intake. So whether that means, you're eating we'll say more sugary things after a workout, or you're planning it in your day or your week on particular days and times, like that's always a great way to, rather than eliminate, just decrease the amount. And then figure out what's sustainable for you. Like with anything, you got to find what works for you. It's not a one fits all. Yeah. One size fits all.
One fit.
One fit. You know what I get. You got. Yeah, exactly. But if you have any questions, be sure to submit them. We didn't have any questions this week, but y'all are crushing your check-ins, crushing the challenge. For those of you who are in the challenge, keep it up. And next week we'll be talking about fats, because we got to talk about the last macronutrient, right? Yep. So if you have any questions on anything we presented today, or anything that you want to see talked about, let us know. We're here to help. But we love you, and we will see you all next week.